This is the critical moment, President Zelensky's request.
As for the Patriot systems, we understand that there is a significant deficit and that this poses a major problem. Consider these systems as part of the security guarantees of our country. And for example, the United States, which could, in reality, as license holders, owners of this brand and concerned companies, guarantee the Patriot systems to Ukraine.
The corresponding enterprises could guarantee. And
Ukraine is ready to buy at least 10 systems.
Let's focus well on the aspect, including
technical. Buy 15 billion, please explain well, General.
Ultimately, what Trump will definitively say or not say is the true test. This makes Ukraine's safety dependent?
Yes, of course. And in fact, what is terrible is that it's a weapon. We always talk about offensive, defensive weapons. We say we don't know what it is, but this is really a defensive weapon. That is to say, it's about taking down the missiles, the drones that are hitting Ukrainian cities. So it's absolutely not about, with a Patriot missile, for example, going deep into Russian territory and causing damage and continuing the war. It's simply about protection. It's the equivalent of the Israeli Iron Dome that we understand very well to prevent missiles from falling. And indeed, if the United States really refuses this, it's really very problematic. It's proof that the United States is definitely abandoning Ukraine.
Xavier, really explain to us, there are a number of cities that without the Patriots are in great danger.
So, is there a particular type of missile that can only be stopped by the Patriot? Currently, the ballistic missiles reach altitudes of over 100 kilometers. You need radars that are pointed upwards, because cruise missiles, fighter helicopters, they're more towards the ground. Even the hypersonic Kinjal missiles, we can intercept them. The French Mamba health system, it's to intercept them. But for the ballistic missiles that the Russians have developed in larger quantities and which are now capable of hitting as far as Kyiv, you need to have these systems. However, the version that can intercept these ballistic missiles that come from very high up, Ukraine has only 3 of them, so just 3 cities can be protected. What does Russia do then? It targets the other cities. With no system capable of intercepting them, they fire upon the submissive during the Palm Sunday procession, causing about 30 deaths, and it's to avoid that.
We listen.
First,
Donald Trump's response, the one he gave to this urgent request from the Ukrainians.
Mr. President, did you talk to President Zelensky about his offer to buy more war missiles? He is still looking to buy missiles. You know, listen, when you start a war, you have to know that you can win it, right? You don't start a war against someone who is 20 times bigger than you, hoping that people will give you missiles.
There you heard Trump's response. In essence, it's no. And another one.
Again, yes or no. In fact, it's not suggested. It was relayed in some tabloids and relayed at great expense that he had refused. Ukraine is discussing purchasing anti-aircraft defense systems, but let's be clear about the amounts involved. The reality of the situation is different from what's being portrayed. Manufacturing these custom items takes over 18 months as they are not readily available off the shelf.
It's the existing systems. These are not the systems that will be manufactured. The existing systems, it means that the United States is getting rid of them. It's not even easy. Yes, but they have 100, I believe.
Don't talk at the same time. Honestly, don't talk at the same time. It really serves no purpose.
Yes, I say, the Americans don't have that many. They're not going to part with their weapon.
Anti-aircraft.
And why? Well, then, in this case, if I were a soldier, I wouldn't part with it. They have dozens of bases all over the world. They have to protect their base in the Middle East, in the Far East, everywhere. They require systems just like us. The systems are not available off the shelf. It's very expensive. It takes time to make. And I believe they have 75 in all. These systems.
Spain has 3. It serves them.
What for?
And who am I defending?
Spain currently.
With its 3.
Patriots selling systems is understandable, but claiming to take from stock is something I find
more dubious. Can the Europeans compensate for it? That's the real question. We see the Europeans being very active, outgoing, and brave, but are they capable of making up for it or not?
So there is a French system then. We talked earlier about the French SAMT, which is currently dedicated only to intercepting rather horizontal systems, even when they go very, very fast. There is the new version of the Aster 30 missile called the B1NT, which has passed its test of intercepting these famous ballistic missiles. If we press the button and produce this en masse quickly, we can replace the United States if they don't want to sell. We know how to produce, we have validated the technology and we can supply them quickly, but we are still on a timeline of 1 year, 1.5 years. A radar system with the ability to track 1,000 targets simultaneously is the one in question.
Capable of tracking
1,000 targets at the same time. The interest of the Thales radar indeed is that it is capable of tracking what is below and above at the same time. To use the American Patriot radar, you must choose either the bottom or top position. It cannot track, see incoming ballistic missiles and the missiles below. That is to say, a French radar replaces 2 American radars. So that's a big advantage. And then, indeed, the missile, so it's more efficient. It's more efficient, but we have only now validated the missile that allows interception. It will take at least 18 months to start delivering it.
Right. But it's just to bounce back on what Trump just said. I'm not at all. Well, I don't see it like you do. I see that Trump, he is saying no. And he is saying that it's Ukraine that started the war, or rather Ukraine with the United States who started the war. It's a suggestion he is making, which always goes in the direction of Russian propaganda, unfortunately. And that basically, he will find all the arguments to leave Ukraine aside. As if Ukraine was attacking Russia, implying we needed to think about it more carefully. So unfortunately, it hasn't changed much compared to what Trump was suggesting to us at the beginning of his term. And besides, it hasn't moved anything from the Russian position. That is, if we had seen that this positioning of Trump, it had changed something. For Russians, this strategy may work, but for me and Ukrainians, we don't see how it does.
What's striking is this rapprochement between Trump's argument and the Russians. Both consider that Europe, in a way, has something of a warmonger. This tone is heard in both Washington and Moscow, especially tonight. Listen to Peskov.
The United States continues to work in this regard with the Europeans and the Ukrainians. But in the future, of course, we expect the Europeans and Ukrainians to show their determination to find a peaceful settlement. Unfortunately, we see Europeans determined to continue the war. It's an aggressor talking about argument.
Peaceful, who talks about
Peaceful arguments.
hey,
We need to find a way to stop the war. It's good that the Russians stop attacking.
If they stop tomorrow,
There are
Assaults there.
bombings. We are at peace tomorrow. To think it's us, possibly for supporting Ukrainians too much or too little. They may wish we supported them more. This way, they will force the ceasefire on the suffering Russians. The repetition of this language and how it becomes part of everyday speech, and that people like Luke Ferry, to name but one, are talking nonsense, and that they take this language and this Russian propaganda, it's unbearable. And the fact that there are people who really believe that it's Ukraine and Europe who are refusing peace today, and that we want war, it's so implausible. It's the reversal of the burden of proof. And the public really needs to understand how much this deceptive discourse needs to be denounced. It should not just be commented on, it should be systematically denounced.
look, listen, rather read Medvedev, who is in a black rage. Many Russian leaders are reacting tonight. Obviously, as you say, France does not remain indifferent.
It's a good one.
News, there you go. So let's read what is good news in your eyes. Medvedev, seemingly the leader of the Ukrainian government, visited Paris for talks with the United Kingdom, Germany, and France of the number of European coffins they will be ready to accept. After the deployment of the so-called coalition of volunteers troops in Ukraine, there is an obsession.
he mentioned the United States, and so the Ukrainian clique came to discuss with the Europeans. However, Americans were present at the same table, yet Medvedev did not mention them.
What annoys them the most, obviously, is that the Americans are there, that the three Americans were around the table. In addition, that for them is the irritating element.
Yes, that's the irritating element, because he thought he had the monopoly of the two-way discussion, and he was starting to be able to circumvent Trump as he wanted. The narrative was good, etc. And then in the end, Rubio is a serious guy. I believe Rubio, he knew the issue was more complex than how it was being presented to the American people in the world. And so now he is obliged to consult his allies, because the reassurance force will only come with the help of France and the United Kingdom. If we want a solution and security guarantees for Ukraine, it will inevitably go through us. Since the Americans have already said they will never put troops on the ground,
There is an obsession with France. There is an escalation happening between Russia and France. That is to say, there have been moments of agreement. Remember de Gaulle, for example, in 1966. He takes an 11-day trip to the Soviet Union. Many in Paris said the old man has gone mad. 11 days in the Soviet Union, it was an idol. Today, we are at the other extreme. Paris, Moscow, it's hatred. It's a power that counts.
and plays a key role in resolving this conflict. And indeed, considerably, it's an excellent power.
We can take pride in it, by the way. That's what
I was going to say,
In fact,
what they don't want is to see a European leader, like de Gaulle at the time. From the moment there is a new European power, there is a possibility of having a European Union around a leader. France is ideal, with nuclear power and all. As Cyrano de Bergerac said, we do not abdicate the honor of being a target. Today we are proud to be leaders in this field. In any case,
There is always an admirer of Cyrano de Bergerac, or someone who thinks it's too inflated. What is it? His opinion?
Is it really Cyrano de Bergerac? I like it too. It's magnificent.
Germany is undergoing significant changes. According to recent news, they are raising the Taurus. Merz, the new chancellor, the one who will be in charge, certainly now in the coming days, in any case around May 6th, his full power should be constituted. Wants to give the Taurus missiles to Ukraine. This is really a major milestone in the war that is being waged, and it makes people furious.
This time, the Russian leadership is targeting the Germans.
And because it's direct, given that the use of these cruise missiles for military purposes is impossible without the direct intervention of German military personnel. Any strike against Russian targets or critical transport infrastructure. And I remind you that the future German Chancellor explicitly cited the Crimean Bridge as a potential target. Will be considered as a direct participation of Germany in the hostilities alongside the Kiev regime, with all the implications that this entails for Germany, of the Kiev regime with all the ensuing consequences for Germany.
Xavier, she starts from a premise that is deliberately false and misleading to pretend that Germany will be involved. Germany sold Taurus missiles to South Korea without having German officers present to monitor their targeting in North Korea. I was a mission planner on Rafale, particularly configuring bomb trajectories. We have a mission preparation software in which we can define what will be the trajectory of a missile or a bomb. And so, obviously, when France transferred the Scalp missiles to Ukraine, we can establish red zones that are off limits, such as nuclear power plants, to prevent them from being targeted. But once the Ukrainians have the software, they are completely free to use it, with the restrictions we have implemented. So, when Germany, and all the better if it does, transfers its missiles to Ukraine, Germany will not be involved. It's a transfer of material, like Iran sending Russia supplies used to attack Ukrainian territory.
How to explain this revolution? You've been stationed in Germany for many years. General Richoud, who was terrified at the thought of being engaged in an army, people even mocked the army, what had become the German army, right? Yes, of course. And who today has regained muscles to such an extent that she is ready to challenge Russia.
She has already changed coalitions, as that is no longer Mr. Scholz's unique selling point. Still, if you look at when he had long hair in the 70s, Mr. Scholz was a great pacifist. There you still have Mr. Merz, who comes from a very conservative Christian Democratic Union, Christian Social Union coalition, and who are traditionally tougher. There he realized that nothing was anticipated from Russia, so he aligns himself accordingly. But I was certain of it. I tweeted it about a year ago saying they will come to it, it's certain, because they don't like the Germans to be the bad students. They don't like to be pointed out. We were handing out scalps and shadow stamps. From the United Kingdom side, it was evident that sooner or later they could not resist the pressure and that they would provide rates. It's good news that we supplied 4,000 heavy helmets in February 2022. There, we have a change.
It seems like they have, in a logic, the best defense is the attack. The best defense is to challenge Russia. No?
Not necessarily the attack, but not to hold back when leading the war. Because actually, you know, Ukraine has always been presented as a wrestler with both arms tied behind his back. He should fight against someone who is stronger than him.
You have to read what Merz says about the Chancellor of Germany on the Kerch Bridge. Even France doesn't say that. I believe no European country says that. He encourages Ukrainians to strike the Kerch Bridge, recalling when they sent him a stamp depicting the bridge being hit in a major operation. The Ukrainian army must come out of the defensive, Germany, the leading economic power in Europe, says it must be able to sever the land connection between Russia and Crimea. Putin must realize this war is a dead end for him. Germany, which had its teeth filed down.
You have to look at a map of Europe, see that Germany, it is a little closer to us, Russian front than we are. And there is a real fear. There is the fear of American abandonment, and there is the fear of Russia, which is still
very
real.
This is very important. Let's really focus on what Marion is saying. That is to say, look at the map. Geography speaks, as Mitterrand said, states make the history of their geography. When you are German, you feel, let's say there.
The breath of the bear one.
A little closer.
The breath, yes. If they look to the east, the breath, that's us. But that was another era. It was another era. But no, they are very close. And then their history with the Russians during the Second World War gives them a very particular approach to Russia. It even created this belief that by trading, we would be friends with them for life. We buy gas from them, etc. That was Mrs. Merkel, who came from East Germany and who believed in it indeed. But also they feel a historical responsibility towards the East and towards Poland, but explain, well, the
geography. We are in a week where Russia has threatened Poland in very harsh terms. And when you live in Berlin, you are very close to Poland.
From Berlin to Poland, what is it, by car? From Berlin, it's 75 kilometers, I believe, because in fact, all of East Prussia is today in Poland.
So,
during World War II, Berlin was at the center of Germany. Today, it's nearly on the border.
remember, you lived through this war. When we discussed a potential world war during the Cold War, Germany was at the center of it. We imagined that we would fight there.
We fought on the limes, that is to say on the wall, because we remember that the wall, it was not only in Berlin, a gash extended from the Baltic to Switzerland, visible with the Golden Emirate and everywhere else. And so the battlefield was truly Germany, and Germany had 2,000 or 3,000
tanks. Look at the map. Russia is not far at all. Because there's that little bit there, the little brown bridge there, that's Kaliningrad. In Kaliningrad, you have the Russian nuclear weapons that are placed, and from Kaliningrad to Germany. In fact, as the crow flies, it's roughly 200 to 155.3 miles, so it's not far at all. Germany also borders the Baltic Sea, making it vulnerable from the north. For the Russian fleet and for Russian aviation, which can even pass without hindrance, since there are international corridors above the Baltic. And so, of course, there is that. And in addition, don't forget that there have been attacks on terminals, attacks on depots, the planned attack against the chief executive officer of
Rheinmetall.
And so Germany has understood that the Russian threat is something real. It's not something we imagine here on the set for our pleasure.
Putin wants to put increasing pressure on this part. When we stay on this map, he is gathering troops. 78,000 men, half of what he amassed in February 2022. What is he saying to Western Europe? In reality, I'm indeed ready to raise the level of danger. Volodymyr Zelensky and Western sources indicate this.
I think it's a moment of truth for Russia to test how far it can go with the West in this configuration it is in.
The reality of the threat today, it's in Narishkin's words, the boss of the Foreign Intelligence Service, the service we were just discussing. He talks about the threat he poses to the Poles and the Balts. They should understand, but do not yet understand, that in the event of NATO aggression, the first to suffer will be the political circles of Poland and the
Baltic states.
Poland and the Baltic states fail to comprehend that. It is the intensification of military activity at the borders of Russia and Belarus that has become one of the factors, one of the reasons for the current, vast, acute, and very dangerous crisis on the continent.
European. There is nothing new there, truly. But what is interesting, Baltic states, Poland, it's an obsession. For them, the lost territories provide access to the Baltic. Let's remember that when they had the Baltic, they had it from St. Petersburg to the Deutsche Demokratische Republik, that is to say, up to half of Germany. And that today they have nothing left. The North was neutral, it is no longer. The rest is almost. These are NATO troops, these are NATO countries, they only have Leningrad or St. Petersburg left. And these countries that are in the middle, indeed, I think there is an obsession with them. And these are countries that have escaped from the Russian Empire. So in the imperial dream, I think there is always this kind of fantasy that it should return at least under the Russian influence of Ayure, if not of Ayure, sooner or later.
And have you heard Narishkin? He says that the Netherlands will attack Russia, Estonia will attack Russia. It's
the same thing
they
did to Ukraine, but
it's madness. Ukraine, at most, we can say it's a big country. It's a country that is even 20% larger than France. At
this level of argument, I don't think it's really the effect that matters. But
there, really, Estonia is a very small country. No Estonian leader in any delirium, in any nightmare. Nightmare, yes, the Russians invading Estonia. But no Estonian leader has planned to attack Russia. So it's delirium.
And then we also have to look at the international level. We focus on Europe as if it were the bad Europeans, the bad NATO, who were always expanding. But what's happening in Kazakhstan? Kazakhstan has signed a defense agreement with China aimed against Russia. Russia is threatening and systematically attacking its neighbors wherever they are. And whether you're in Georgia, in Europe, or wherever the border is, you are threatened by Russia. So, Russia has the ability to push away the countries it cannot constrain, as it cannot attract them to itself. Because it is a power, a soft power, as they say. And well, so they try to escape and attach themselves to the neighboring powers that could protect them.